For years, my life was shaped by an invisible force that dictated every decision, every hesitation, and every anxious night of overthinking the fear of the future. It was not a tangible monster lurking in the shadows, yet its presence was undeniable, pressing on my chest like an anchor, whispering doubts into my mind. The what-ifs, the unknowns, the terrifying possibilities of failure, they became a constant hum in the background of my existence, draining my energy and coloring my days with uncertainty. I was trapped in a mental loop, desperately trying to predict and control an unpredictable future. My mind became an overworked machine, constructing possible futures that rarely came to pass, yet I lived as though they were already my reality. Then, one day, I stumbled upon a realization so profound, so utterly simple, that it shattered the very foundation of my fears. I had been living in a future that did not exist. My worries, my sleepless nights, my meticulously crafted scenarios of disaster, all of it was fiction. Stories I had told myself in an attempt to prepare for what might never happen. I was suffering from things that had not even occurred, carrying burdens of outcomes that were mere phantoms of my imagination, and in that moment, something shifted. I realized that the only thing I had been truly experiencing was fear itself. My life was passing me by while I was lost in a world of hypothetical suffering. Fear of the future, I realized, is nothing more than a misplaced belief in our own ability to predict the unknown. But what if the unknown is not the enemy? What if, instead of fearing it, we embrace it? What if, instead of trying to control every aspect of our lives, we learn to dance with uncertainty? What if the chaos of life is not something to be tamed but something to be explored? These questions lingered in my mind, reshaping my perspective on what it meant to truly live. This realization was not just an intellectual exercise, it was a call to action. I began to explore ways to reframe my relationship with the future, to untangle myself from the grip of anxiety and step into the present with a newfound sense of courage. The solutions were not immediate, nor were they always easy, but they were transformative. I discovered that shifting my mindset required more than just logical reasoning, it required action. I had to start doing things differently, living differently, and above all, trusting myself more. One of the first things I learned was the power of presence. Fear thrives in an imagined future, but life happens in the now. When I shifted my focus from what might happen to what is happening, I found a strange sense of relief. Instead of agonizing over the uncertainties of tomorrow, I trained myself to anchor in the beauty of today. The way the sunlight streamed through my window, the sound of laughter in the distance, the simple joy of a warm cup of coffee, all of these were reminders that life was not something to be feared, it was something to be experienced. But this required conscious effort. I started practicing mindfulness, engaging in activities that grounded me in the present. Whether it was journaling, meditating, or simply taking deep breaths in moments of stress, these small habits rewired my brain, teaching it to appreciate the now rather than fear the later. I also discovered the liberating truth that preparation is not the same as control. Planning for the future is wise, but obsessing over it is destructive. So I began to adopt a mindset of adaptability rather than rigidity. Instead of mapping out every possible outcome and exhausting myself in the process, I focused on equipping myself with the skills, mindset, and resilience to handle whatever came my way. Life, after all, is not about having all the answers. It is about learning to navigate the questions. The more I trusted in my own ability to handle difficulties, the less I felt the need to predict them. Another breakthrough came when I redefined failure. Much of my fear stemmed from the idea that failure was a definitive, irreversible end. The what if failure is not the opposite of success, but rather a crucial step toward it. Every successful person I admired had encountered setbacks, yet they did not let those moments define them. Instead of seeing failure as proof of inadequacy, I began to see it as evidence of effort, as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. With this shift, I found myself more willing to take risks, to embrace new opportunities without the paralyzing dread of what might go wrong. I told myself that failing at something meant I was in motion, that I was learning and growing rather than remaining stagnant. The freedom that came with this realization was exhilarating. I also learned to lean into gratitude. Fear of the future often blinds us to the blessings of the present. When I started making gratitude a daily practice, writing down even the smallest moments of joy, I noticed a profound change in my outlook. Gratitude does not eliminate fear, but it certainly diminishes its power. It reminds us that, even in uncertainty, there is always something to hold on to, always something to appreciate. The more I focused on what was already good in my life, the less I felt the weight of the unknown. My perspective began to shift from one of scarcity to one of abundance. Life no longer felt like something I had to control, but rather something I had the privilege of experiencing. Most importantly, I realized that fear is not something to be eradicated entirely. It is something to be understood and managed. Fear is a natural part of the human experience, a protective mechanism designed to keep us safe, but it should be a signal, not a master. Instead of letting it dictate my choices, I started using it as a guide. When fear arose, I asked myself, is this fear pointing me toward growth? Is it an indication that I am stepping outside my comfort zone in a way that could expand my life? If the answer was yes, then I knew I was moving in the right direction. I decided to make fear my ally rather than my adversary, using it as a compass that directed me toward meaningful experiences rather than allowing it to keep me stuck in hesitation. Looking back, I see how much energy I wasted fearing a future that never arrived in the catastrophic ways I had imagined. I see how much joy I postponed, how many opportunities I turned down, simply because I was too afraid of the unknown. But I also see how that fear led me to one of the most important revelations of my life. The future is not something to be feared. It is something to be embraced, shaped, and lived with an open heart. It is not a puzzle to be solved, but a journey to be walked. So, to anyone who finds themselves trapped in the same cycle of fear that once held me captive, I offer this: you do not have to know everything. You do not have to control every outcome. You do not have to let fear dictate your choices. Trust in your ability to handle whatever comes. Believe in the strength that already exists within you. And most of all, remember that life is not happening in the future, it is happening right now. Do not miss it, because, in the end, the greatest tragedy is not what might go wrong, but what we miss out on while waiting for certainty that never comes. The future often feels like an endless puzzle, filled with uncertainties and unanswered questions. But the truth is, life isn't meant to be lived in a constant state of worrying about what's next. It's meant to be felt, experienced, and cherished in the present moment. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory over fear. Every deep breath, every smile, every shared moment of laughter is proof that life is happening now, not in some distant, unpredictable future. So, I ask you, what fears have held you back? What realization helped you break free from the weight of uncertainty? Have you ever had a moment where you let go of worrying and truly embrace the present? Share your story in the comments. Your journey might be the spark that helps someone else find the courage to do the same. Let's inspire each other to live fully, fearlessly, and with open hearts.